On the night of my 40th wedding anniversary, while the chandeliers glowed and champagne glasses clinked, my own son stood up, raised his glass and shattered my world. "Mom," he said with a smile that cut sharper than any knife, "you were never Dad's real wife. You were just his cover. And the will proves it." The entire room froze. My daughter gasped, the guests whispered, and I felt my knees weaken beneath me. In that single moment, 40 years of love, loyalty, and sacrifice crumbled into dust. If you think that was shocking, wait until you hear how my children tried to erase me, and how I turned their betrayal into the greatest revenge of my life. My name is Eleanor Parker, 65 years old, a retired high school English teacher who spent her entire life in the warm, humid heart of Savannah, Georgia. For 40 years I was Richard Parker's devoted wife, cooking his favorite meals, organizing church fundraisers by his side, and raising 2 children I thought were my pride and joy. Daniel, my eldest, is 38. A polished attorney with a perfect smile and a reputation for winning every case, even when his conscience should have told him not to. And then there's Emily, 35, my beautiful social media darling daughter. With her curated life on Instagram and her endless brand deals, she always looked flawless to the world. Though behind the filters, she had a hunger for wealth that never seemed satisfied. We lived in a grand southern mansion, a white-columned house shaded by century-old oak trees and dripping Spanish moss. That house wasn't just bricks and wood, it was memories. Every Christmas morning, every scraped knee, every whispered bedtime story echoed through those walls. But the night Richard died, and the moment my children revealed their true faces, that house became something else entirely. A battlefield where bloodlines would clash over money, legacy, and power. Richard was a man of routines, meticulous, precise, almost obsessive when it came to order. Every bill filed, every photograph labeled, every receipt tucked away in neat folders inside his mahogany desk. A few months before his heart gave out, he sat beside me on the porch as the cicadas hummed in the Savannah night. His voice was low, the way a man speaks when he knows time is running short. "Ellie," he whispered, using the nickname only he ever called me, "if something happens to me, don't trust Daniel with the finances. Promise me." I laughed nervously at the time, brushing it off as the paranoia of a man getting older. But the way he gripped my hand, the weight in his eyes. It wasn't a joke. And now, standing in the same house we built together, watching my children circle me like vultures, I realized Richard hadn't been paranoid at all. He had known. He had seen something coming long before I did. What I didn't know then was that his final moves, the way he rewrote his will, the secrets he left hidden in his files, would change everything. And that my children's betrayal was only the opening act of a far darker play. It happened just 3 weeks after Richard's funeral. The casseroles from neighbors had stopped arriving, the sympathy cards sat unopened in a pile, and the silence of the house felt heavier than the Georgia summer air. That evening, Daniel arrived in his tailored navy suit, Emily trailing behind in designer heels that clicked like gunshots on the hardwood floor. They didn't come with flowers or comfort, or even a kind word. They came carrying a leather briefcase. Daniel set it on the dining table, the same table where we'd celebrated birthdays and Thanksgivings for decades, and slid a thick document toward me. "Mom," he began smoothly, "it's time we face reality. Dad's will is clear. Everything, the house, the accounts, the investments, now belongs to me and Emily. You'll of course be taken care of. We've set aside a monthly allowance for you." I blinked at the pages. My hands trembled. "An allowance," I whispered. "This is my home, my life. Richard would never." Emily cut me off with a sigh, her tone dripping with rehearsed sympathy. "Mom, you can't handle this house alone. The stairs, the upkeep, the bills. It's not safe. You'd be happier in a retirement condo, somewhere with people your own age." But behind her smile I saw it, the cold calculation Richard had warned me about. Daniel pushed a pen across the table. "All you need to do is sign, Mom. Transfer the deed. We'll handle the rest. You can finally relax." Relax. That single word felt like a knife. Because what my children really meant was, Step aside. Disappear. You've served your purpose. 40 years of sacrifice, of cooking, cleaning, raising them, standing by Richard's side, reduced to a signature on a forged piece of paper. That night, in the house I had built into a home, my own children declared war on me. I packed my life into 2 suitcases and a battered box of photographs. 40 years of marriage, 4 decades of memories, all reduced to luggage small enough to fit into the trunk of Daniel's Lexus. Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed, scrolling her phone as if she were waiting for an Uber rather than watching her mother dismantle her life. Every time I paused to wipe my eyes, she checked her watch and sighed. "Come on, Mom, we don't have all day." When I lingered by Richard's study, my hand on the doorframe, Daniel's voice cut through the silence. "It's not yours anymore. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Those words crushed me harder than any illness or grief ever could. Not yours anymore. By the time Kevin, Emily's husband, hauled my bags down the steps, I felt less like a mother and more like an unwanted tenant being evicted. He avoided my eyes as he loaded the suitcases, muttering something about new beginnings. They drove me to a budget motel off the interstate. The sign outside flickered. Half the neon letters burned out. The Magnolia Inn. $49 a night. Thin towels, thinner walls, and a smell of mildew that clung to everything. Emily pressed $200 in my hand like she was tipping a waitress. "This should cover you for a few nights," she said briskly. "Kevin will transfer some money once Dad's accounts are sorted." Her tone was casual, but the truth was savage. They had thrown me away. That night, I sat on a sagging mattress, staring at a stained ceiling, clutching Richard's wedding ring in my palm. My chest burned with humiliation, grief, and a rage I didn't yet know how to name. In the span of 3 hours, I had gone from wife and mother to widow and exile. And yet, even as despair swallowed me whole, one thought kept pushing through the fog. Richard would never have left me like this. Somewhere, hidden in his meticulous order, was the truth. I just had to find it. The next morning, I sat in the dim motel lobby, sipping weak coffee from a styrofoam cup. My suitcases leaned against the wall beside me, like silent witnesses to my downfall. I had $20 left in my wallet and no plan beyond surviving the day. But then, like a whisper from Richard himself, a memory surfaced. Thomas Green. Richard's old attorney. A man in his 70s with a slow southern drawl, a sharp mind, and a reputation for never missing a detail. Richard trusted him more than anyone. I scraped together enough cash for a bus ticket into downtown Savannah. The ride was long and bumpy, each stop filled with strangers who smelled of cigarettes and sweat, but I clutched my purse tightly, knowing this was my only chance. Thomas's office was on the 2nd floor of a brick building that overlooked the courthouse square. When I walked in, the scent of leather and old paper hit me, comforting, steady like the law itself. His secretary looked up, surprised. "Mrs. Parker, we've been trying to reach you for weeks." My heart skipped. Weeks? Why? Before she could answer, Thomas appeared from his office, adjusting his glasses. His eyes softened with recognition. "Eleanor. Good heavens. I was wondering when you'd come in. I tried calling the house, but Daniel told me you were traveling." Traveling? My own son had lied to keep me away. I swallowed hard. "Thomas, I need to know the truth. About Richard's will. About what he left behind." His expression shifted from warmth to concern, then to quiet resolve. He gestured toward his office. "Come in, Eleanor. You deserve to see this for yourself." And as he opened a thick leather folder on his desk, I realized something life-changing was about to unfold. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my fight back. Thomas slid the heavy folder across his desk, the leather creaking under its weight. My hands trembled as I opened it, bracing myself for more pain. Inside was Richard's will, the real one, dated just 6 months before his death. His handwriting, neat and unmistakable, sprawled across the final page beside the notary's seal. Thomas adjusted his glasses, his voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of anger. Eleanor, what Daniel and Emily showed you was a forgery. This," he tapped the page firmly, "is your husband's last and only valid testament." I leaned in, scanning the words as if they were written in fire. "To my beloved wife Eleanor Parker, I leave our home at 1425 Willow Lane, along with 70% of all assets, investments and accounts, totaling approximately $24 million. My breath caught. $24 million. The house. Everything Richard and I built together. Thomas continued, his tone darkening. To my son, Daniel Parker, and my daughter, Emily Parker, I leave a combined 30% of assets, but with a condition. Their inheritance is contingent upon their treatment of their mother after my passing. Should they fail to treat her with dignity and respect, their share reverts entirely to Eleanor." I gripped the edge of the desk, my heart pounding. Richard had known. He had seen their greed, their entitlement, their coldness, and he had prepared for it. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered. He was protecting me, even after he was gone. Thomas leaned closer, his voice low and resolute. "Your husband anticipated this, Eleanor. He told me in no uncertain terms that he feared Daniel's ambition and Emily's vanity would consume them. That's why he rewrote everything. And from what you've just told me, the eviction, the lies, the forged papers, they've already broken the condition." I sat frozen, the weight of it all crashing over me. My children hadn't just betrayed me, they had destroyed their own futures. Thomas straightened, determination flashing in his eyes. "What Daniel and Emily have done isn't just cruel, Eleanor. It's criminal. Elder abuse. Fraud. Forgery. We can prove it. And when we do, everything they thought they stole will come back to you." For the first time in weeks, I felt something stir inside me that I thought I'd lost in that motel room. Power. The game my children thought they'd won wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Thomas leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers as he studied me. "Eleanor, what your children did wasn't just heartless. It was criminal. They forged legal documents. They lied to me. They stole from you. This is elder fraud, plain and simple." The words sent a shiver down my spine. Fraud. Criminal. My own children. Thomas opened another file, this one filled with correspondence, signatures, and financial records. "I've already compared the signature on the forged will to Richard's actual documents. The forgery is sophisticated, professional even, which means Daniel and Emily didn't do this alone. Someone helped them. My guess, Kevin, your son-in-law. With his financial background, he would know exactly who to call." I clenched my fists in my lap. "So what happens now? Do I sue them? Throw them in jail?" Thomas gave a thin, almost grim smile. "Both. But we'll do it strategically. Quietly at first. I've already contacted Detective Marissa Cole with the Savannah Police. She specializes in elder abuse and financial crimes. We'll hand her everything we have. In the meantime, we freeze every account tied to Richard's estate until ownership is verified." I felt my breath catch. "You can do that. We can and we will. By tomorrow morning, Daniel won't be able to swipe his credit card for a cup of coffee without it being declined. Emily won't be buying another designer handbag. Their new empire is about to crumble in real time." For the first time since Richard's death, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Satisfaction. That night, back at the motel, I lay awake on the lumpy mattress, clutching the copy of the Betrayal will Thomas had given me. I thought of Daniel, so smug in his suit, and Emily, so dismissive with her phone in hand. I pictured their faces when the rug was pulled out from under them. I whispered into the darkness. "You wanted to erase me. You wanted me gone. But you're about to learn. I'm not as weak as you think." And as the neon sign outside buzzed and flickered, I felt the spark inside me grow stronger. The war my children had started was about to turn in my favor. It didn't take long for the storm to come. 3 days after Thomas froze the accounts, my phone lit up with Daniel's number. His voice, once smooth and confident, was ragged with fury. Mom, what the hell did you do? The bank's saying all Dad's assets are frozen. My cards aren't working. Emily's mortgage payment bounced. This is insane. I held the receiver steady, my voice calm. No, Daniel. What's insane is forging your father's will and throwing your mother into a motel like garbage. Silence. Then his voice dropped, cold as ice. You don't know what you're talking about. I almost laughed. Really? Because I'm sitting here with Thomas Green, holding the real will. The one your father signed 6 months before his death. There was a pause, and in that pause I heard it, the crack in his armor. 2 hours later they showed up at the motel. Daniel in his wrinkled suit, fury etched into every line of his face. Emily mascara smudged, her designer handbag dangling like a weapon she no longer knew how to use. They barged into the tiny room, the floral curtains fluttering from the slam of the door. You've lost your mind, Daniel hissed. You can't fight us. We'll drag you through court until you're broke and begging. I stood slowly, clutching Richard's real will in my hands. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like their mother. I felt like their opponent. No, Daniel. You're the one who's broke. And by the time the police are finished, you'll be the one begging. Emily's voice cracked, her bravado slipping. Mom, listen. We only did this to protect you. You don't know how to manage millions of dollars. Dad always handled everything. You'd make terrible decisions. Stop. I snapped louder than I intended. The sound shocked even me. For 40 years I cooked, cleaned, worked part-time jobs to pay for your education, and kept this family alive. Don't you dare stand there and tell me I'm incapable. The only terrible decision I ever made was trusting you. Daniel sneered. You think you can just cut us off? We're your children. I looked at them, really looked at them. 2 strangers dressed in expensive clothes, drunk on entitlement, blind to their own cruelty. Children protect their parents. Children honor their family. You declared war on me. And you're about to learn that I don't lose. For the first time since Richard's funeral, I saw it, the flicker of fear in Daniel's eyes. And that fear tasted sweeter than any revenge I could have imagined. Just when I thought I had finally regained control, Thomas leaned across his desk one afternoon with a file that looked far older than the others. His face was pale, his voice hushed. Eleanor, there's something you need to know about Richard. Something he never told you. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He pushed the file toward me. Inside were documents, letters, and FBI seals. My heart stuttered as I read the words. Richard Parker, my husband of 40 years, the man who kissed me goodnight every evening and walked our children to school, had been a confidential informant. For 12 years he'd been working with federal agents, feeding them information about a notorious mafia family known as the Torino Syndicate. I gasped, gripping the edge of the desk. That's impossible. Richard hated danger. He couldn't have. Thomas shook his head gravely. He wasn't just involved, Eleanor. He was deep inside their network. He helped them launder money through his consulting firm, but secretly he was funneling information to the FBI the entire time. That's why his finances were so complex, why he was so meticulous with his records. The room spun around me. My husband, a spy in his own house. And then Thomas's tone darkened further. But Eleanor, there's more. If Daniel and Emily know even fragments of this, they might try to use it. They could attempt to blackmail the government, or worse, align themselves with the Torino family to secure their inheritance. My blood ran cold. My children hadn't just betrayed me. They were sitting on a powder keg that could ignite everything Richard had died protecting. That night, as I sat alone in the motel room, I couldn't stop hearing Richard's last warning echoing in my head. Don't trust Daniel with the finances. Now I understood. He hadn't just been talking about money. He had been warning me about a war far bigger than family greed. And if I didn't play my next move carefully, I wouldn't just lose my inheritance. I could lose my life. By the time the truth about Richard's double life sank in, the FBI was already at my doorstep. Agent Sarah Martinez was nothing like I expected. Sharp-eyed, calm, with a voice that carried the weight of someone who had stared down killers and never blinked. She spread files across Thomas's mahogany desk, evidence of Richard's years working undercover. "Mrs. Parker," she said firmly, "your husband's information put half the Torino family behind bars. But if your children try to leverage this knowledge, they won't just face fraud charges. They'll be walking straight into the lion's den." I swallowed hard. "So what do we do?" She studied me for a long moment before answering. "We set a trap. But we'll need you to play along." My heart pounded, but something inside me hardened. I wasn't the meek widow they thought I was anymore. I was ready. 2 nights later, Daniel and Emily came to my house, the one they had tried to steal from me. Kevin was with them, carrying his sleek leather briefcase as though it were a weapon. They thought this was their victory lap, their final chance to corner me into silence. The living room glowed warmly, but the air was ice cold as Daniel began. "Mom, here's how this works. We know about Dad's dealings. If the FBI ever hears about it, you'll lose everything. But Kevin has a plan. We can negotiate immunity. You keep $5 million, the house, and your dignity. We get the rest." Emily leaned forward, her tone syrupy sweet. "This is the only way to save the family name, Mom. Don't be selfish." For a moment, I let the silence stretch. I wanted them to believe they still held the power. Then I smiled, slow, deliberate. "Funny," I said softly, "because the FBI already knows everything. In fact, they're listening right now." Daniel's face drained of color. Kevin stiffened. "What are you talking about?" Before I could answer, Agent Martinez stepped out from the hallway with 2 other federal agents, badges gleaming under the chandelier. The room erupted. Emily gasped, Daniel cursed. Kevin's briefcase slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a thud. "Daniel Parker, Emily Parker, Kevin Hayes. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and attempted extortion of a federal witness," Agent Martinez declared. Handcuffs clicked. Emily sobbed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Daniel shouted about family loyalty. Kevin tried to bluff about legal rights. I stood still, watching it all unfold, my heart strangely calm. When Daniel was dragged past me, he spat through clenched teeth. "How could you do this to your own children?" I looked him dead in the eye. "The same way you forged your father's will and left me to rot in a motel. Except my way is legal." And as the agents led them out into the night, I realized something powerful. I hadn't just survived their betrayal. I had defeated them on my terms. 6 months later, the house on Willow Lane didn't feel like Richard's anymore. Felt like mine. The dusty study where he had hidden so many secrets was now an airy art studio, splashed with sunlight and streaks of paint from canvases I'd started working on again. For the first time in 40 years, I was creating something just for me. Daniel and Emily were both serving federal sentences. Kevin too. Their names appeared in the local paper often, but never for the reasons they once dreamed of. And I didn't shed a tear. Instead, I poured my energy into something new. The Eleanor Parker Foundation for Senior Justice. With part of Richard's inheritance, money I had earned through survival as much as through marriage, we funded legal aid for elders manipulated or defrauded by their families. I vowed that no one else would sit in a cheap motel room, clutching their memories, feeling worthless and discarded. One afternoon, as I walked through the oak-lined streets of Savannah, a young woman stopped me. She recognized me from a news story about elder financial abuse. "Mrs. Parker," she said softly, "your story gave me the courage to leave my toxic family. You showed me I wasn't weak." Her words sank deep. I smiled, realizing Richard had left me something far greater than money. He had left me the chance to rise, to fight, to redefine who I was. And maybe that was the truest inheritance of all. Here's what I learned. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, respect, and protection. If your so-called family strips those things away, then they're just relatives, not family. I spent years believing sacrifice was my duty as a mother and wife. But the greatest duty I had was to myself, to stand up, to survive, and to reclaim my worth. So when people ask me if I regret pressing charges against my children, I answer with this. Regret is for the powerless. I am no longer powerless. The best revenge isn't getting even. The best revenge is becoming everything they swore you could never be.